I wanted to jump in also on that demo. I'm going to say thanks for a great demo tonight. That was really interesting. There was one point that I picked up on that I really wanted to try and highlight, and it was touched upon during the demonstration, is the chucking point. Do we have an inside chucking point? Do we have an outside chucking point? And also, what was bottoming out? And certainly for the new turners, bottoming out, they will hear all the time and nobody actually explains what they mean. So while I was watching the demo, I jumped onto my lathe and I just turned a spindle blank, and I've got a 2-inch piece of English oak here. And if I change my camera over, I'm hoping just to get on that. Yeah, right. I've turned the spindle blank, and what I've done is I've created a chucking point at each end of the spindle blank. This chucking point will hold this piece of timber. I can put it into this chuck, like that, turn it up, pop it on the lathe, and it will hold it. That is bottomed out at the bottom of these chuck jaws. What happens is if I get a catch on that, it is instantly going to come away. The jaws are too wide. It is only catching on these little noggins at each side. The bottom is right at the base of the chuck and it's got no support. That's what we call bottomed out. It does not want to be right at the base of your chuck. If I turn that around, if I tighten that up as tight as I possibly can, what we will see is little tiny jaw marks. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but what we've got is corner jaw marks on this chucking point. And it's them little corners that this chucking point was held into this chuck. It was not round. Chucks, when they're made, they're cut and then divided. And as a rule of thumb, I like to use my standard metal ruler. And my metal ruler will sit in between my chuck jaws. And if I tighten that up, that's round now. Even though it has a slice in, that's where the machines cut it. And that is the roundness that we're wanting. So we're wanting these jaws to be as close as possible. So when I open that and I drop that one in, this one has made every point of contact. It is not at the base. It is not at the base of the chuck in here. The corners are no longer touching. The whole chuck jaws are touching. And also the point where the jaws, the point where the front of the jaws, this part, is sitting on the timber around here. Now this one's a spindle blank. When we go on to ball blanks, the idea of an internal or an external chucking point is what we need to ask ourselves. And when we're turning that ball, if you're going to make an internal chucking point, you need to think about the size of the chuck jaws and the piece that you're wanting to sit them on. So in this instance, if I chuck this for an internal chucking point, the chucking point that is going to be left on the bottom of this ball is going to be that size. And that size is far too big a chucking point, really, for a nice ball to have this indent in the base. There's nothing wrong with it, but you are using quite a lot of the bowl. We often work. This is too much. You're going to have to leave all of this on before you start shaping your bowl. So potentially this would work better with a foot left on it rather than an internal chucking point. What you can't do is do an internal chucking point and start turning your bowl out from here, because you're taking away that support from sitting against your chuck. So think about what type of chucking point and make sure that when you are chucking your piece of wood, that your jaws are not creating that four corner block. It is only sitting on these outer corners here, 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 and here. It wants to be sitting all the way around it. And a chuck will only sit all the way around it. When that is screwed in and tightened up against your timber, that can create a foot and not mark your timber at all. If I put that chucking point into there and tighten that chuck up as tight as I possibly can, even if I use the bar on the end of it, it should not mark the wood. It should be supported all the way around. It should leave almost a ring around it rather than indentations. This is very awkward when the chuck's not on the lathe, James.
Yes, it is. And you got a camera on you.
Can you see the ring? Does the camera show that ring?
Raise it up a little higher.
Can you see the ring on there?
Push it forward. Yep, you can see it.
All the way around, rather than
be.
at this end, you've got indentations.
Right, you only got 8 points. 8 points of contact instead of solid contact.
Yeah.
So
Thanks
Martin,
for that,
out of
Dan.
curiosity,
just wanted to touch on that because I think it's important.
No, awesome. No, perfect example. And then, so what's the dimension on that tenon, the properly made tenon there, Martin?
It fits the chuck. Come on, Dane, you know this. You know that
yes,
all
I know.
of the time, there is things that you need to know and there's things that you don't need to know. And one of the things that I know is that tenon fits in that chuck. It's the right size. How big it
all
is.
chucks are different.
They are. And in this occasion, this one is a 45 mil, which is 1 3/4. Does that make sense? 1 3/4 inch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Martin, thank you very much. I appreciate your input. This is very good.
It's just something else to think about. You know, sometimes it's not just about throwing something on the lathe and should I hold it inside, should I hold it outside. It's trying to get the spaces. It's trying to decide whether you're going to incorporate a foot, you know, to create the shape that you're wanting to create. I see so many bowls with huge holes in the bottom where they put the chuck jaws in, and you can almost see that you know, there's no way that it's been sat back on the jaws unless they've been using the shark jaws that are about 2 inches long, where they've gone into the bottom of the bowl, and there's really no need to hold them. If it's correctly chucked, you can probably hold, you know, I'm not saying start digging out a bowl with a 2 millimeter chuck at the bottom of it. You know, you want a decent sized chucking point, and stay within your capabilities, because if you do get that catch, it's going to come away on you. But there's no need to be, you know, trying to put an inch depth into the bottom of a bowl to hold it on your chuck jaws, because you are bottoming it out or you're not getting the support around the chuck. These things are designed to hold timber. We just need to be a little bit careful with them.
Yes.
You may want to add, when you're chucking from the inside out, that you have enough of wood around the outside that it doesn't separate and break out on you.
It's got to have on that example that I showed you there, Trey. You've got to have as much of the wood around the outside of it as your chuck jaws, because it wants to sit against your chuck jaws. And quite often people don't. They'll start shaping it, and there's no support where the jaws are holding on to. You've got to leave that ring, and a lot of it, especially with your smaller bowls, a lot of it can be held very, very easily by looking at what shape you're going to create and how much of a foot you want to do, and you can create the undercut first, running right up to the flat that you're creating, because it needs that flat to be able to sit against the jaws. And you can even put a pattern in there, because when the bowl sits, it will sit on that tiny little section in the center there and not wobble on you, because you've got that undercut.
Correct.
So a lot of the shape can be done, and the presentation of the base of the bowl can be done to save you turning it back around and having to put it into larger jaws to turn off the bottoms, or I've seen numerous things with, you know, people trying to bring the tail stocks up and jam chuck them to turn off the bottoms, and there's no need for any of that, because the majority of it can be done on your faceplate right at the start. If you think about what decoration you want to put in to the base of that bowl and how much timber you need leaving. But yeah, Trey, you're definitely right there. You've got to leave, you know, certainly on that piece that I showed you there, these are effectively my chuck jaws. So on this one, it's really quite large to have an internal. All right, thank you. Get me off.
Very
spotlight.
good, Martin.
I've done my
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Martin. Well done.
Thanks.
Well said.
Well displayed.
Thank you.
Good explanations.